So also with us is Iranian-American journalist and activist Masih Alinejad. She survived 2 assassination attempts as well as a kidnapping plot, all ordered by the Iranian government. That's according to the federal government. They say a hitman made it to her front porch in Brooklyn back in 2022. It was all caught on her doorbell camera. Cops say they then found an AK-47 and multiple magazines of ammo in that hitman's car. 2 men the feds call Russian mob leaders were sentenced to 25 years in prison back in October for that plot. Masih Alinejad spoke at their sentencing saying, quote, "We're never going to give up," and she is kind enough to join us right now. Masih, thank you for coming on today and for your bravery and talking about the subject.
Thank you so much for having me.
So since these protests broke out on Sunday, let's take a look at the map of the country of Iran. A majority of the provinces in the country evidently have had these protests. We're talking 17 of 31 provinces have these reports of protests breaking out. Reports that 7 protesters have been killed by the government so far. What are you hearing from your sources and your contacts on the ground as to what is happening there right now?
I have to say the strong message of President Trump gave hope to people of Iran. And right after his tweet, people in Tehran and across Iran, other cities, they poured into the street. They took back to the street, massive number, large number. That actually shows that the people of Iran took that strong message seriously, and they believe that the United States of America is serious of warning the Islamic Republic that opened fire on innocent protesters. I was bombarded by messages from Iranian people sharing videos of peaceful protests. It started because of the collapse of the Iranian currency, but very soon, the same day, it went beyond economic crisis. They have a clear demand. They want an end for Islamic Republic, but the regime killed more than 7 people because now the information is just coming out from Iran. They arrested thousands of people. And right now that I'm talking to you, people are still in the street late night trying to actually stay united and be stronger to end this regime.
These are believed to be the biggest protests in Iran since 2022. And back then, when that happened, there were over 500 people killed and thousands detained by the government. The Iranian foreign minister is talking about this, and he put out a social media post on X today, which says in part, quote, "Given President Trump's deployment of the National Guard within U.S. borders, he of all people should know that criminal attacks on public property cannot be tolerated. Our powerful armed forces are on standby and know exactly where to aim in the event of any infringement of Iranian sovereignty." Masih, how do you think the protesters on the ground are reading into President Trump's Truth Social posts, essentially saying he has their back?
Yes, I have to say that this is for the first time in the history that Iranian people seeing that a United States of America's president standing strongly with the people of Iran, not sending appeasement message to the killers. In 2009, when people took to the street, President Obama made a huge mistake. Not only he kept silent, but also he tried to send a secret letter to Ali Khamenei, who we really don't know where he is right now, the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic. He's like a rat hiding in some hole. And I remember during a Women Life Freedom Uprising, President Obama, President Biden handing out billions of dollars to the same killers. So right now, Iranian people believe that the regime cannot actually, the United States of America is not going to have a negotiation with these killers, and that's why they're welcoming the strong message of President Trump. But I strongly believe if President Trump is serious wanting to stand with the people of Iran, this is 3 steps, immediate actions. First, right now, President Trump can kick out the representative of the Islamic Republic at the United Nations. They should not have the privilege of diplomacy while they're opening fire on innocent people like Shayan, only 28 years old. Yesterday, he got killed. The Iranian regime actually shooting people in their chest, in their head. So the White House can talk to Elon Musk and convince him to provide more Starlinks, free internet for the people of Iran right now. And the third step that the White House can show the Iranian regime that they are serious to standing with the people of Iran is actually not only condemning the violence, but actually targeted military action against those who order massacre, those who kill innocent people. That will give hope to millions of Iranians. And Iran, without the Islamic Republic, will guarantee peace and security, not just in the region, across the globe, because this is the regime that tried to kill President Trump and the US citizens, US officials on US soil as well. Right now, we need actions. This is the message of millions of people. We are fed up of seeing Iranian people getting killed in Iran. And I believe that President Trump is serious and he will take action against our killers.
Yep, and to your point with President Obama, he later said he regretted not taking more U.S. action in 2009 to support those protests. Masih Alinejad, thank you so much for your time today.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.